All right, so we'll start here at genetics. We're going to talk about some general things today. So what is this drawing? This little spiral staircase, twisted ladder? What is that? Whenever you see that shape, you're probably thinking about this important molecule, Tori. Yeah, that's the DNA molecule. Has a distinctive shape. It's called the double helix. We'll be talking a little bit more about it later on. So we've mentioned chromosomes before. When we were talking about cells, we talked about a structure that's found inside the nucleus of the chromosome. Chromosomes are found in the nucleus of a cell. And what they are is they are little packages of DNA. Now they look different at different times. Sometimes the chromosomes are kind of all unwound in like loose thread in the nucleus, and you can't really see them individually. Other times that loose thread kind of winds up to form these types of structures that we call chromosomes. Often they're shaped like X's, depending on when the picture is taken. And so those chromosomes are inside the nucleus. That's what the nucleus does. It holds the chromosomes. They are very important because they contain the instructions about how to build us, contain the information about our traits. Chromosomes are what get passed on from parents to their offspring. Made of DNA. So, the number of chromosomes that are in an organism's body cells is consistent in that species usually. For example, humans. What do we say? How many chromosomes does a normal human have in their chromosome? Eddie? There's 46 chromosomes. They come in pairs, 23 pairs of chromosomes. So in just about every cell in your body, you have 46 chromosomes. They're exactly the same. Where did 23 of them come from? Maya? Your mom. The other 23 came from your father. Okay, so 23 of our chromosomes we get from each parent, for a total of 46. Cats, for example. Other species have different numbers of chromosomes. Cats, for example, have 34 chromosomes, 17 pairs. So what do you think about goldfish? Raise your hand and take a guess. How many chromosomes in goldfish? Margaret? 17. 17? Another guess? Eddie? 12. 12? Kyle?
I was going to say 12.
12?
I'm going to choose in between there, like 40.
40? Michael?
57.
Excuse me?
57.
57? Ryan?
50?
Okay, let me...
It can't be a high number.
That's what I was just about to say. Why can it not be 47 or 57 or 17?
Because there'd be one more cell from the mom than there would be for the dad or other way around.
Right. If you're getting one from each parent, they have to be in even numbers. So, the number in the goldfish? 94.
But you got one to be an odd, so I'm supposed to then being right.
So, my point is, what does the number of chromosomes mean about a species? Does knowing how many chromosomes in that species give you any information about that species? Yeah? Is a goldfish bigger than a human? Smarter? More complex? Not really, unless you're talking about something. Look, the goldfish number at 94 doesn't really mean anything. The number is just what it is. It doesn't mean it's bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, more complex. It doesn't really mean anything. It just is what it is. Sometimes we can actually take a picture of the chromosomes a person has. This is done frequently, and it's called a karyotype. It's basically a picture, a map, a diagram of a person's chromosomes. So what you see here, each of these sort of X-shaped purple structures is one chromosome. The way it's done is a sample of cells from a person is taken. Then a picture of the nucleus is taken after some staining and some other procedures. And that's what you end up with. To create the karyotype, however, it used to be in the old days, a person would take this picture, cut it up, cut each chromosome out, and arrange them in order from longest to shortest. Nowadays, they do it on the computer. And you end up with a diagram that might look like this. This is a karyotype of a person. Again, you see chromosomes. In this case, they're not X's. They're just lines because of when this picture was taken. But we have the longest pair of chromosomes at number 1, then the shortest at 22. There's some special chromosomes in there we'll talk about. So, when you look at this person's karyotype, how many chromosomes came from each parent? Eddie? No?
Wait, what?
How many chromosomes came from each parent in this person? Tom?
23.
Yeah, 23 from each parent. So if you look at, like, let's say this 14th set of chromosomes here. One of these chromosomes came from the mother, the other one came from the father. If you look at 18, one of these was from the mother, one's from the father. Then there's a special set of chromosomes. This last set here. You'll see they're not numbered. These are called the sex chromosomes. And they're a little different. They're called X and Y chromosomes. And which two sex chromosomes a person inherits determines their gender, male or female. Does anyone know males? What sex chromosomes do males have? Right?
Why?
They have 2. Males have, everyone has 2 sex chromosomes. Well, which 2? Val?
Is it X and Y?
Yeah, it's an X. One of theirs is an X. The other is a Y.
X and Y.
Yep. X and a Y chromosome.
Like Pokemon.
What about a female? Abby? Yeah, females actually get 2 X chromosomes. Nope. Can't. So, if we look at this,
Can we 2 Y?
remember, it's a question somebody that Eddie just asked as well. And the reason why not should make sense if you think about it a little bit. So when this, let's go over here. Yeah. So the sex of the child is actually determined by the male. And we'll look at why in a second. So Maya, do you know why?
Yeah. It's because the sperm cells, they don't contain the X or Y gene. Depends on what fertilizes it.
Exactly. So if we think about this, this is a cell. Is this a cell from a man or a woman? It's a woman. X is a woman. So that's a normal body cell. When she is producing egg cells through meiosis, the egg cells are going to get one of these chromosomes. But what can they get from the mother? They can only get an X. Every single egg cell in a woman has one X chromosome. No. But if there's a male, which has XY in his normal cells, then after meiosis produces new cells that get one of those, what can the sperm cell get? Some will get an X sperm, some will be Y sperm. So what happens if this sperm cell fertilizes this egg cell? What's the child going to be? Girl. How about if it fertilizes this one? Girl. How about if this sperm cell fertilizes this egg cell? Boy and boy. So what are the chances of having a girl? 50-50. 2 out of 4 are girls, 2 out of 4 boys, and that's about what we have. We have roughly 50% of babies born are male and 50% are female. That's how what we call sex determination works in humans. Now in other animals it's not the same. Some reptiles, the temperature at which the eggs are incubated determines whether the offspring are going to be male or female. Often these karyotypes that we were just talking about are produced for a fetus before it's been born. Parents may want to know if their child has any genetic abnormalities, because there are situations in which the offspring does not get the proper number of chromosomes. The procedure starts with an amniocentesis. This is when the doctor inserts a long needle into the amniotic sac, withdraws a small amount of amniotic fluid, and in that amniotic fluid are cells from the fetus that the doctor can use. And they look at those cells, and they can take a picture of the chromosomes and see what they look like. They can also do certain genetic testing for certain diseases. And so an amniocentesis and some genetic testing can tell whether or not the fetus may have Down syndrome or cystic fibrosis or muscular dystrophy or some other diseases as well. One example of which is Down syndrome. So if we look at this karyotype of an individual, this is an individual that has Down syndrome. Do you see anything in this karyotype that looks a little different than the one we looked at earlier? Right?
Some of the chromosomes look like they've been bent over.
Yeah, but if you think back at the other one, that's just the position they were in. So that doesn't really have any impact, as if they're bent or crooked or anything like that. Abby? Yeah, if we look through the chromosomes, at number 21 here, there happens to be 3 of these 21st chromosomes that are all the same size. And that is what leads to what we call Down syndrome. It's, a better term is called trisomy 21. It means 3 21st chromosomes. And a person with Down syndrome, during fertilization, they happen to get 1 extra 21st chromosome. And therefore, all of the cells in their body have 1 extra 21st chromosome, and that leads to various developmental delays or physical abnormalities that are what we call Down syndrome. If you look at this, again, another example. You see the chromosomes lined up according to their size. But again, when we look at 21, there's an extra chromosome. So that's what tells you. Now, let me ask you a question. This person, is this a boy or a girl? Male or female? Anna?
Male.
That's a male. How about this one? Margaret?
Female.
Yep, it's a female. And we know by looking at these sex chromosomes. We have XY for male and XX for female. This is just more of the same. So this karyotype, what they show the chromosomes a person has. Now, this question's a little bit tougher. Not that much. Is this a male or female? Top right. Anyone? Michael?
Female?
Correct. Why did you say that?
Because of the two, like, number 23.
Yeah?
I looked at it and it looked like highlight of the
Okay. So yeah, you look at 23. Now they're not labeled XX, but what do you notice? They're the same. So yes, that's a female, and we know by looking at the 23rd chromosome. They're both the same. They're both X chromosomes. What about this person down here? Hello? Okay, thank you. Tori, you're leaving? So, this person, male or female? Wait. Are you stretching or is your hand up?
I don't know what's the question.
Is this person, this karyotype, of a male or a female?
That's a male because it's X. Let me see. Let me see. That looks like a male because the X cell looks like a male and a female.
So you're right, it is a male. Where were you looking? At which
I was
chromosome?
looking at cell 23 because since 23, since a female cell, since X cells are those long ones and Y cells are short ones, since there's a long and short one, that makes it a male.
Correct. So they're chromosomes. So these chromosomes, yeah, female. The X chromosome is much larger. It's like a normal-sized chromosome. In males, the Y chromosome is this short little stubby thing here. It actually carries less genetic information than the X chromosome. So correct. This is a male. They also have Down syndrome. You can see that at this 21st chromosome. All right, so now let's get into some genetics. That's about chromosomes and so forth. So genetics. What word do you see here? Genes. It's a study of genes. It's a study of what we call heredity. What does it mean if, you've probably heard maybe somebody said, this disease is hereditary. What does that mean when a person says that something is hereditary? Abby?
They got it from
Yeah, that it can be passed down from one generation to another. That's what heredity is. And many traits, many characteristics, some diseases are hereditary. They're passed on from generation to generation through the DNA, through the chromosome. So genetics is studying that, studying how these traits are passed on from person to person, from parent to offspring. There's a gentleman who we sometimes know called the father of genetics. This is Gregor Mendel. He lived in the 1800s. He was an Austrian monk. Austrian, not Australian. Austria and Australia, two different places. pretty far away. But he was from Austria. He was a monk, like a religious person. But he also had interest in science. And he did extensive experiments that helped us understand about how traits are passed on. Okay? And what he did is he worked very closely with pea plants. Has anyone grown peas in your backyard? Anyone? No one has a garden with peas in it?
No.
Do you?
I do. I don't this year. I have, though. So peas they grow on a vine. They have flowers that grow into the pods that have peas in them. And he worked with those pea plants. Pea plants were very good because what he can do is cross. So plants reproduce sexually as well as asexually. So it may be hard to imagine, but plants reproduce sexually. They have reproductive cells, just like animals. They're basically sperm and egg cells. We call them different things, but they are basically sperm and egg cells. In fact, last week or so, you may be very familiar with plant sperm cells. They cause you some problems because that's what pollen is. Pollen is basically the sperm cell of a male plant. We call it pollen. And so plants reproduce sexually. So right now, those plants that are flowering are releasing lots of pollen into the air. It's blowing through the air, much of it. And if it happens to land on a female flower, it fertilizes an egg and it grows into a seed. So it's really similar to other types of sexual reproduction. We just kind of don't think about it that way. So what Mendel was able to do was take pollen from one type of pea plant, put it on the female reproductive organs of a female pea plant, and then grow the offspring to see what they were like. And he could keep them in his garden. He could study them very carefully, keep really good records about the characteristics they had. And he did this thousands and thousands of times. He observed things like the height of the plants, the color of the flower, the color of the pea, the texture of the pea. And he started to see some patterns. When he looked at his data, he found some patterns that we know are still true today. He kept very detailed and careful notes and data. And so he came up with some conclusions, and we'll talk about that. We're going to sort of simplify, and it may be a little confusing right now, but should become clear later. So what he said is that the traits he was seeing in pea plants, things like tall or short pea plants, purple pea flowers or white pea flowers, green peas or yellow peas, all of those things, all those traits, he said, each one is controlled by two factors. And each parent is contributing one of those factors to the offspring. Each sex cell, or we would call them gametes, contributes one of those factors. So what that means is that a pea plant has purple flowers. Well, it has two genes that determine that. One came from the father pea plant, one came from the mother pea plant. And so that's why Mendel's considered the father of genetics, because he did extensive experiments with pea plants, helped us understand a lot about how these traits are inherited. This is I know you guys looked a little surprised when I talked about sexual reproduction in plants, but this is a flower. These are the parts of a flower. And so what you see here, this is the male reproductive organ of the flower. So this is called the anther. If you ever, if somebody sent flowers to your house, you have tulips growing in your yard or something. If you look at that flower carefully, you'll see on these little stalks, these little ovals that have powdery stuff on them. Those are the anthers. They produce the pollen. These are the male parts of the flower. The pistil, this part in the center, is the female parts of the flower. Okay? It has a stigma, and in the base of it has an ovary and an ovule, a little egg cell. If pollen from a plant floats, lands on the stigma, it grows down into here, reaches the ovule, and fertilizes it. We have the combining of genes from two different parents, and then the offspring is produced. Now, for many flowering plants, that forms a seed. What forms around the seed? Right? Sometimes, but more often, I'm sure some of you are going to consume this next period. Where do you find seeds? In fruit. Because after fertilization, the ovary of the plant often turns into a fruit. So when you're eating an apple, you're eating the ripened ovary of the female part of a plant. And when you're allergic to pollen, you're allergic to plant spurs. So, new fact for you to learn today.